Well, my name is John Diffenderfer. I'm a principal with Aedis Architects. I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Mariana Alvarez-Parga. I'll never pronounce that exactly right. But I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you actually Googled 7x7x7, looking for the website? Did you find the website? I'll tell you what I found. I found that. 10,000 stores selling this ridiculous Rubik's Cube. So when I was 10 years old, I had the little 3x3. You remember that one? And it was unsolvable. I didn't know how to figure it out. I asked my buddy Mike, who was the smartest kid I knew. He went out and bought a book. This is before YouTube and the internet. So ultimately, me and my friends got together, and we solved it by breaking it up into little pieces and cramming it back together again. Right? And I think that you guys probably, many of you did the same thing. So why do I tell you that story? I tell you that story because once upon a time, net zero energy was an unsolvable problem. Let's say 10 years ago, when solar was 10, 12 bucks a square foot or per watt of installed, 10 to $12 per installed watt. Thank you. When it was 10 or $12 of installed watt, solar was ridiculously expensive. Wind wasn't really an option. Good building systems level building performance modeling was kind of was voodoo. It wasn't really science. And but now all of that's kind of changed, right? We sort of solved. I mean, you've just listened to how in new construction, net zero is becoming commonplace in a lot of locations, and
it's possible.
And it's possible. Okay, so sorry, lost my train of thought. But Chet didn't ask us here to talk about new construction. In fact, in a few years, new construction is going to be mandatory. It'll be just code compliance to be net zero. But Chet's asked us to look at all of the millions of square feet of existing infrastructure that's ahead of us. It's sitting on our books as liabilities. And that's our current unsolvable problem. And San Diego High School is an example of that. And before Mariana goes into the details of sort of the net zero energy approach to that campus, our approach has been to look at the unsolvable problem, to zoom out and scale up until we bring into focus the actual clear answer.
All right, so San Diego High School is in an urban setting. It's south and east of Highway 5 as it wraps around downtown San Diego, where it intersects the 163. It is approximately a 32-acre site with 10 buildings, some 2 stories and some 3 stories buildings. We were asked to look at the Gymnasium building and a 2-story building south of it that is a classroom and administration wing. So before doing that, we also wanted to see the capacity of the site and what would be our starting point, right? We always need a plan to see and a goal. The existing buildings combined, they average an EUI of 37 approximately. Now, if we were to use and maximize the space on the roofs and install high-efficiency photovoltaic panels and reduce the EUIs to 30, this campus could be net zero energy. So that is our starting point, 37, and we want to bring it down to 30. So looking into the buildings, this is a 2-story. This is the structural diagram of the 2-story building. It was built in 1976 with concrete blocks and continuous reinforcing, and all the perimeter walls and those intermediate walls are solid concrete blocks. The first floor has the administration area, some classrooms and a teaching kitchen as well. And the second floor is all classrooms on both sides of a corridor. This corridor ends on wider spaces that are currently not being utilized, and it calls for some rethinking. In addition, there are a series of small spaces along those perimeter walls that are used for offices or storage. So the very few classrooms that are lucky to have a window, it's actually blocked by this storage. The storage is the one with the window. So our approach, as John has mentioned, was to zoom in and zoom out. We looked at this at different lenses, and what is right now is the close-up lens, and that is what we consider it's yesterday's solutions that we already know and has been mentioned multiple times today, replacing the lighting, adding smart controllers in the irrigation. We want to focus on the mid-range lens, and when we're scaling here, zooming out, we're not talking about scale, we're also talking about investment, and we're talking about time. We really want to look at those goals set for 2030, and looking at the strategies that we apply today, we want to make sure they're good for what's coming up, because there are more lenses, there's more beyond 2030, and we want to make sure that what we do now is not reworked in the future, but it's actually part of it and changing those goals. So the mid-range lens approach it takes intense work that has more impactful benefits. So we are suggesting relocating those smaller rooms that are on the perimeter walls, putting them in between classrooms so that we are freeing up those walls. By doing that, moving those non-structural partitions, we are able to widen the corridors and be able to get an atrium aligned with a series of skylights to bring natural light all the way down to the first floor. We worked with a structural engineer to see how we can add views to those spaces. This is almost a 300-foot long elevation. It only has 4 windows that are 6 feet wide. So we have determined that from all that solid walls, if we can cut open up to 10% of that area, and with that is enough to bring a window to all the classrooms. So we are proposing punching those windows open. Also, in these 14 years to 2030, there's going to be multiple bonds. So if in one of those cycles, we can also prepare the plumbing system to replace it to a dual system, as Amy was talking earlier, we are getting our building ready for when reclaimed water is available on the site. Again, it's part of having the work continues over the years. Also, including those tubular daylighting devices to bring the daylight to the first floor, especially with how it has grown in technology nowadays. The new windows would be high-low automated windows that can create natural ventilation in the classrooms and assisted with the smart fans that can recycle and make sure that the air movement is even in the space. But also taking advantage of the climate zone 7 that San Diego is in. There's night cooling opportunities with a high fog of the area, and we would be reversing that natural air by having it go through the window, through the classrooms and up the atrium, creating a chimney effect to cool down. The thermal mass properties of the concrete walls can keep the spaces cool during the day and slowly have that heat exchange. The gymnasium, in a similar fashion, also built the same time, 1976, concrete tilt-up walls for the big space and also the smaller ones, the locker rooms and the exercise room. Very solid walls. We are proposing as well replacing this array of lighting with operable skylights, assisting the ventilation with the biggest fans, and the smaller spaces. Obviously, views here are not a key priority, but we would limiting the opening of those concrete walls for installing automated louvers that can create that high-low effect for the air movement and improving the airflow. So zooming out again and going back to the starting point, we said that it was at 37, and if we can bring it down to 30, we could achieve net zero energy. Applying some of these measures is achievable, so that could happen. But if we apply all the measures that I described, it could lower the EUI to 23. So that is an opportunity to meet, and that's where the fun begins, is when the district can actually meet and decide what strategies are important and can be applied to address more than one issue and determine what's going to mandate the interventions. Is it purely energy? Is it student performance? Is it health? Is it all of the above? So that's where that delta between the 23 and the 30 is where you can strategize. And what's important is that it's not only the facilities and the design team that's going to be in those meetings. It is critical that the school board is part of it, and Emma knows is also, so that everybody knows what the plan is and what can happen. But there's more to it, right? There's water that also needs to happen. And for that, I'll let John solve that.
All right, so So again, energy used to be the unsolvable problem, and now I think it's water. So what is the definition of net zero water? It's where you can balance the available water income from natural sources, and in most cases we're talking about rainwater, with the water uses that are on site. Faucets, toilets, irrigation, kitchen uses, and so forth. The other 6 presentations, you heard all the same kind of strategies that we are approaching. Drought-resistant landscaping, converting planting areas to xeriscaping or alternative surfacing, artificial turf, or more sort of hybrid grasses and so forth. Also, gray water when the regulations will support it, and I think this is another uncharted territories to look for regulation change to allow for gray water use on site, not just for irrigating your plants. And then ultimately, going back to some of Amy's really great closing the loop diagrams that really tells the story about on-site water recycling and so forth, and really being the future and getting a regulatory environment that'll support that. But through really looking at most of California, I mean, you can calculate until the cows come home, but there's just not enough rainwater to really offset the use of the water on site. The boundaries are set, and the rainwater is either it's insufficient and it's at the wrong time of the year, and you're always going to be in this sort of catch-up mode. At San Diego High School, this is a model of how much water they're actually using for various needs. But when you balance that against the amount of rainwater that's coming, the red represents the deficit. So how do we really solve that? So I'm going to introduce the idea of the 3 dimensions of zero.
One more.
One more.
There. It's gone.
Oh, good. The 3 dimensions of zero, and those are time, money, and the amount of area that you have to work with, sort of the physical space, your site. So here is your school site, San Diego High School or wherever. This is your current bond, and this is your current bond cycle. This is the cube that we all operate in. We've done this for decades. And there's your property line and your next election. But what about your neighbor's land? You're beyond your property line. What about your entire block or your entire city? When you start to change your perspective and zoom out, now you're starting to look at other sources of money, joint powers authority, public-private partnerships, your bond, your successor's bond, and the next generation of money. And this starts to redefine the solution area that we can work with. Here's net zero energy. It's right within our box. But net zero water is out here. And when we define that problem and change our perspective, the solutions will start to become more evident. And that takes vision, and it's going to take commitment beyond your own tenure. And it's also, I want to talk to you about eco-districts. An eco-district is any time that multiple stakeholders, multiple properties come together and do joint investment in infrastructure for mutual benefit. So what does that mean for San Diego High School? Well, it turns out San Diego High School is right on the edge of probably one of the largest open spaces in Southern California, Balboa Park. And it's on the downhill side, so think about what that means to your water resources. If you go beyond the high school property lines, you look at it's adjacent to the city college. Across the freeway, you have the medical center, you have parks, you have zoos, and now imagine this as an entire watershed for both rainwater, but maybe as well as a source for black water, sanitary, and storm. And perhaps that purple dot down there isn't just a new decentralized water recycling plant to go with the 2 that are already in the county, but maybe it's actually a new curricular asset for the community college, where now the high school students and community college students can learn about water recycling and earn certificates and be able to create an entirely new career path and a program for the college. So is it just San Diego that can do this? Here's the opportunity in Palo Alto. Here's an opportunity in Sacramento. Here's an opportunity in Fresno, now bringing in some commercial properties as a source of rainwater catchment. So everybody that you've listened to today, really, if you kind of, again, zoom out and look at the entire state, everybody has talked about these various different kinds of approaches, and they're all totally appropriate, whether it's technological, whether it's policy-related, fiscal. When we talk about eco-districts, it's a financial opportunity, it's a regulatory opportunity, cultural opportunity, and just to sort of conclude, I think as we leave the stage, you're going to be compelled to applaud. But I'd like to say that instead of just applauding for the speakers, I'd like you to think of that applause as a commitment to the students of Elliott Ranch that have been in our audience at Elliott Ranch School, that we're committing to them that we won't be handing them a problem to solve, but a problem that has been solved. Thank you.